streaming. It is connecting. I'm going to go to my channel and that way I can make sure the audio and everything is okay. That way I can make sure the audio and everything is okay. Say something. That way I can
Blah.
make sure the audio and everything is okay. Say something. That way
Blah.
I can. The mic keeps picking up like what I said, and so it's like this infinity echo. All right, so now I got the chat there. Yeah, everything's good. Everything's golden. So, hi, and welcome back to anyone who's watching so far. It says one viewer. That's probably me. You and I have been talking about this. We watched a documentary on Netflix called Pray Away, and it's about conversion therapy camps. And, that it goes over the history when they started in the 70s. It started with Exodus, which got, turned into ex-gay. Now there's a group called ex-gay, and those are survivors of that conversion therapy camp. I actually knew someone that was part of the ex-gay group. But for me, this was a very, very difficult documentary to watch. And it had reminded me of some things that I had forgotten about that happened in the early 2000s, such as Prop 8, or what was it, Prop 8 or Prop 9?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, like, when, this was, the right, the Republicans, the conservatives, they want us to play little government, and leave it up to the state's decision. And this was an example, like, of Prop 9. Was an example, this isn't exactly, like, this has a little bit to do with the documentary, and they mentioned this in it, but, there were blue states, like California and some other ones they started to allow for gay marriage, which is what, the Republicans want. They want limited government. They want the states to do this stuff themselves. And so some of the states started to do that. They said, well, you know what? The federal government doesn't allow gay marriage. That's fine. We're going to allow it in this state. And so Prop 8 or Prop 9, maybe I should Google what that is. What was it?
But the documentary Pray Away, it also talked about trans people in it too.
Yes, it did. Yeah, it was Prop 8. So, you had these states that were doing limited government, and then George W. Bush Jr. brings along Proposition 8, where they wanted the federal government to step in and tell these states that you can't marry homosexual couples, LGBTQ people. So I think that's...
To which the Republicans, they do the opposite of what they say. They say they're for little government, but they act like big government.
Well, it's almost like they use things to their convenience, doesn't it? Like, in
Hmm.
the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the argument that's given is, oh, well, it's not the Supreme Court that should be making laws. And it's like, well, but they've been setting legal precedents since. I mean, you can. There's pages and pages of it listed by the SupremeCourt.gov. Like, you can go directly to their site and look at all these Supreme Court hearings that have changed legal precedents over the years, and it dates all the way back to like the late 1700s and early 1800s when some of the founding
Yeah,
fathers were still alive.
yeah, back to the founding of the country.
And it's like no one wants to overturn something like Plessy versus Ferguson. It's they specifically Clarence Thomas named off. Well, we want to overturn Roe v. Wade, and they did. We want to overturn Oberfell v. Hodges. We want to overturn Lawrence v. Texas. And it's like, well, that's really interesting because it seems like you only want to use this Supreme Court shouldn't decide laws argument um, when it suits an agenda that you have. Like, so it's selective of when this
Hmm.
applies. And it's quite apparent to anyone that is LGBT, isn't it? Or a female in the Roe v. Wade, which Kansas, thank goodness, voted no on changing the state's constitution to get rid of abortion. So now abortion is set in stone. It's law. It's legal in Kansas. I think that caught the.
That's good.
It is good, and it caught the attention of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, which I find Joe Biden to be milquetoast. I think he should be codifying things like Oberfell v. Hodges and Lawrence v. Texas, so they don't try to take that away. But in
Yeah,
this,
Joe Biden is no FDR,
no, he's not. Not even close. But you got people on the right calling him a communist. And
but he's not that either.
well, look at people like like Stalin or Lenin, and look at the things that Stalin and Lenin did and their actions, the state of the country, and all that. Then look at Joe Biden. Can you honestly tell me with a straight face that he is a fucking communist?
No, he's not even authoritarian. Not really.
No, he's milk toast. He
He's if he wasn't president, he would if he wasn't in politics, he would be that typical old man blabbering about the old days and eating his cereal in the morning.
Well, I mean, when they overturned Roe v. Wade, all he did was come out and go, like, "Oh my God, I can't believe they actually did this," and this is
Well,
a
well,
tragedy. And it's
you
like,
could have you could have stopped it, Biden. Why didn't you?
well, like when FDR was trying to put some of his policies in place, the Supreme Court threatened to overrule it, and FDR said, "Well, I'll just keep throwing Supreme Court justices at you and until it's not." And it's like that was a president that had some big hairy dangly balls, and he put them right in their face.
Yeah.
And there's some Republican presidents that I admire for standing up to banking cartels and Wall Street. Presidents like Andrew Jackson and Thomas Jefferson. They were able to do that.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure there was backlash with Abraham Lincoln when he was freeing the slaves.
Oh, most definitely. There was. People were pissed. I mean, he got assassinated. That is a really cool shirt, by the way. I dig it.
Well, yeah, that's cool.
And you're getting yourself a nice pair of boobies there.
Well, I'm just wearing a bra.
No, you got some boobies going on. You're growing some boobies.
Maybe a little bit.
Well, they look good on you. I'm glad that you're growing some boobies. They're distracting though.
Kind of like boob tubers back in the day that caused the algorithm to change because they were getting so many views because women were wearing like scantily clad shirts that showed cleavage. They would get more views than if they wore like, a shirt covering their cleavage. People are fucking horny on this website. What do you expect?
Sex sells. It does.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
But YouTube is like, no, 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 no sex. Whereas Twitch goes, yeah, you can be borderline naked and do like hot tub streams. Cam girls,
well,
come our way.
YouTube used to allow it. They used to.
Hmm.
I mean, you used to be able to find porn and stuff on here. I think it's
I'm
still.
pretty sure. I'm pretty sure you still can. Everything just slips through the cracks on YouTube.
But I'm saying, like, back in the day, like, you didn't have to hide, like, the porn. Like, YouTube was just like, okay, it's porn, it's adult, you have to be 18.
Yeah, that was
You just
that
had
was
to age
before
restrict it.
that was before the whole crackdown on like edgy content and where YouTube was trying to sponge out all of the adult and violent quote violent content, and then that's when YouTube Kids came around, I think.
Yeah. The culture war really fucked YouTube up bad.
Yeah. If there was no culture war, I think YouTube would still be edgy today, where YouTube wouldn't give a fuck.
Yeah, I agree. I do. I mean, you know how I feel about that. Like, between the alt right and the alt left,
I
they
call I call it the conformist right and the conformist left. Both are conformist.
yeah. I don't know how you can be anti edgelord and be a nonconformist. I don't know how that works.
You mean be an edgelord and be a woke scold or a right wing conformist or something. You know, it's that was one of my rants with my post on Facebook when I said the right wing people used anti SJW talking points, but they were originally from edgy people, and right wingers just like use the same talking points, and they were masquerading as edgelords, and then they started like peddling like traditional values, and it's like at that point you're not an edgelord, you're just a shill for the conformist right.
Yep.
Because a
Um,
true because a true real edgelord doesn't give a shit about political affiliation.
well, and I mean, we've talked about this recently. My problem with like political correctness, it's like I want to use foul language to, um, sort of demean and be condescending towards,
Bigots.
bigots.
Yeah,
And,
so do I.
it's
I
hard.
mean, I mean that was my rant that I had the other day because I showed you those screenshots of like when I called a fucking transphobe fucking retarded for believing that trans being trans is a choice. You know, it's like, if you think it's a choice, fucking grow tits and chop your fucking penis off.
Yeah, they're not going to do it. And it's just like, when
Yeah.
they tell me being gay is a choice. I'm like, okay, go suck a dick. They're like, no. I'm like, why not? Well, that's not natural, or that's degenerate. And it's like, well, no, I think you can't do it because you're straight. You're heterosexual. I don't have
Yeah.
time. I don't have time for this hug box um, language. I don't have time for it. It's like these people need to know their positions, their opinions are not very well received or appreciated. I mean,
No.
And you can't do that with hug box language. You can't do it.
No, I showed you that list of words that were like uh, quote ableist and non-ableist, and you just thought it was fucking stupid.
It was fucking stupid.
Yeah, I can show you it. Uh, I have to search for it. I don't know. One of them was like unbelievable for like insane or something.
Yeah,
And
you say that to, somebody who's far right out the Overton window that, believes in something like the Homo Global Agenda or cultural Marxism, this sort of neo-McCarthyism. If you say like,
that
oh, you're
that is insane.
well, if you don't say insane and you use one of these hug box terms, it's like, oh, that's cute, that's adorable. It's not.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't send the message that you want to. You want to be like, no,
No,
you're fucking
no.
nuts.
Like this. 10 easy alternatives to common ableist language. Say this. Unreal. Not that. Insane. So unreal, insane, unbelievable replaces crazy. Jerk replaces psycho. Awful replaces stupid. Bad replaces dumb. Moody replaces bipolar, ridiculous replaces retarded, eccentric replaces mental case, dismantled replaces crippled, unruly replaces madhouse. And it's like, how is madhouse like ableist language? I
I
don't get.
I like I said. I mean, these people when they say that like they act like they don't know what you mean by the words you're using, that they're lying to you. It's like you know what I meant by
Exactly.
that. You know what I meant.
Ex- Yeah, shut the fuck up. You know what I fucking meant. You fucking retard. Yeah.
Yeah, you understand what I'm saying here, and you know that I'm not
I
trying to be
Yeah,
a.
and I understand semantics, whereas woke scolds they do not. Anyone peddling political correctness just like throws fucking semantics out the fucking window.
I mean,
You know?
what do you want me to do to for somebody that says, like, I think that you should be hung on the day of the rope because you're a dirty, filthy, disgusting degenerate that engages in sodomy. You want me to be like, oh, you're being such a silly Billy. I mean, that's
That
not what
sounds
I want
like
to say.
that sounds like you're not taking the threat seriously, you know?
No, we're being PC. I'm totally taking it seriously. They're silly Billies. Like, that's what I mean. It's not strong enough. Like,
No,
no, I want you to know that I find that absolutely fucking abhorrent.
exactly.
Oh, I'm back to vaping, and it's beautiful.
I need a new vape. I was looking at the Geek Vape, uh, what's it called? The Geek Vape Legend 2, I think. Something like that. The Aegis Legend 2.
So, I mean, we don't have any watchers yet, but I imagine that eventually, typically it picks up, and even though it's a live stream, it picks up in views as it goes. Like, that's my channel is bizarre. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but
Yeah,
yeah.
you get like more views than you do subscribers.
Well, and like if you go to a channel with like a little over 1,000 subscribers or something like that, they pull in the kind of views that I get. But,
Hmm.
I'm sitting here with only like 351 subscribers, but, my videos won't go like boom the first day they're released of like, okay, that's the max. Most YouTubers will look at that, like they look at how many views on the first day of release. It'll the first day of release their views go up, and then it just kind of starts tapering off and very slowly going up after that. Mine, it's opposite. I first release it, and it's nothing, and then like it just starts doing this, and one day it goes like this, and then starts kind of plateauing. I don't know. You know what? As long as people get the message, that's the important part to me. It's like I do want the channel to grow because I don't mind ad revenue. Like, the advertising agencies would basically be paying me for airtime. I'm okay with that because it's like, I hate you guys. You may not like me, but you can put your stupid little advertisements here and there, and you have to pay me money to do that because it's my content. Fuck you. It's my art and stuff. So, but I don't know about setting up a Patreon. I don't know that I could ask people to give me money to, give education or give you my point of view on something or my opinion. I
don't think so either. I don't think I'll ever have a Patreon for like my stuff. I don't think so.
I'm okay with ad revenue, but I don't know about asking for Patreon money. I don't know about that.
I suppose if my channel got really, really, really big, and
if you ever got like 1 million subs, which I think is really unlikely, maybe then you could have a Patreon. But I don't really see your channel getting 1 million subscribers.
Well, no, but I mean, but if it did, it's like I would look into like hiring like moderators and editors and stuff like that, because like I'd have to probably produce more content, and it's like, well, I'd have to pay them to do that, so I'd have to set up like a Patreon or something like that to deliver the content itself. With that many subscribers, that's a lot of subscribers. I mean, dealing with my comment section as it is, it's like, whoa, this is intense.
Yeah, and you'll get like what, 5 people that comment.
I don't. You should go back and look at some of the other videos I have. I've got videos that are almost 2,000 views and tons 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 of comments. Like when I go to the YouTube studio and I look at the comments, and the first filter that automatically pops up is comments I haven't responded to, and it's just pages and pages and pages long, and a lot of it is just bots. So
yeah,
I can't scroll. I don't scroll through there to look for which ones are bots, which ones are not. It's I try to be up and up on that. And YouTube also likes to put things into the held for review tab, so I have to go in occasionally and approve people's comments. And like the more right-leaning people they think that they're targeted, well, I'll tell you, I moderate my own channel, and I have to approve leftist comments too. I've had to approve yours a few times.
I wonder why.
And Edgy Intellects, I've had to approve his as well. Who knows?
Probably Chick Mickens too, especially.
Oh, him all the time.
It's a daily occurrence for him.
Well, quite frequent, not daily. Not all of his comments go there, but quite a few of them do.
I know.
It's probably, YouTube doing that because he probably goes on other people's channel and makes, offensive comments. Well, his comments tend to be quite offensive, and he can be offensive without using a pejorative, like he's that kind of person. It's like that's what people need to realize. It's like you can be outrageously offensive without using any pejoratives at all.
You can just be offensive with body language. You don't have to say anything.
Well, like his perspective on LGBT people is quite foul. I don't really particularly care for it, but I'm still willing to engage in a civil conversation with him. I mean, like the whole concept, being gay is a choice. No, it is not. I started thinking about this, when straight people have said that it's, like that one that we were debating on Twitter, he said that it was against human nature or something like that, and I made the
Well,
comment.
yeah, totally not Bill.
But I made the comment, well, if it wasn't natural, then it wouldn't happen. But I started thinking about this, especially after watching this documentary, Pray Away, is that, you know, like, if you're heterosexual, well, of course, if you have a homoerotic or homosexual encounter, it's not going to feel natural to you because you're heterosexual. But
Right.
when you're homosexual or bisexual, it does feel natural to you. You know, it feels unnatural to me as a homosexual to be with a woman. I mean, it's just the way it is. You know, I didn't ask for that. That's not a choice. That's not something I have control over. But and then you know you have those that probably might think that it's a choice because they're bisexual and they suppress their homoerotic homosexual.
Bisexuality.
Huh?
They oppress their bisexuality and masquerade as straight.
Well, yeah, they you know, bisexuals can do that. You know, they can
Yeah.
suppress their you know, same sex attractions and romanticisms and focus on their heterosexual side. If you're purely homosexual, you can't do that, and if you're purely heterosexual, you can't do that.
No.
But
But um, I think there's more of like around, on the political correctness stuff that I want that we should talk about. Like it just hurts the left. It doesn't help it. And it was just as bad as in the 90s and 80s with the right as it is with the left. You know, in the 80s and 90s, a lot of the political correctness was peddled by the Christian right, I think. But for some reason, they stopped doing that, and then it just kind of plateaued, and then all of a sudden the left does it in the early 2010s with the woke scolds, you know? And
yeah,
it's like, what the fuck?
because like in the 80s and early 90s, you had the PC movement, but it was more geared towards, you know, like rock stars and artistic people who were saying, you know, things about like cult stuff and Satan and fuck this and fuck that and sex this and sex that, you know, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And they wanted
And
to.
a lot of the PC stuff was peddled by fucking Christians.
And the majority of the people who were against political correctness were the left at that time. Now the left is peddling political correctness, and the right is against it.
I don't know why
How?
the left. I don't know why the left started to peddle the political correctness.
Well, I think it comes from a good place. It comes from, you know, like trying to protect the minorities. You know, us leftists tend to be bleeding hearts in that sense. So I think it comes from a good place of, you know, just trying to defend and protect minorities.
Yeah, but after like 7 or 8 years or 9 years, it became toxic.
Well,
The woke scolds are toxic.
I mean, you know, you can call syphilis an STI instead of an STD if you want. It doesn't make syphilis sound more appealing.
No.
It doesn't change what it is. I still don't want it.
You can replace the medical term mild retardation for like mentally challenged or lower functioning, but that doesn't change the outcome of what is going on with said person.
Lower functioning mental faculties. But
Yeah.
there is retardation is a medical term, and it's not always referring to mental states, like there's certain medical conditions where you have like a retarded growth of like an organ or something like that, and they might refer to it as such.
You have a retarded organ.
Well, it would be more like Greek and or Latin words.
Right. Well, I mean, retard is a Latin word.
So, like, you know, like pancreatic retardation or something like that, or whatever the Latin or Greek word is for growth. So, pancreatic growth retardation, you know, and that would tell any other physician that saw you, oh, okay, this person has their pancreas is not growing properly for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, when you talk to a bigot that hates LGBT people or hates people of color and is misogynistic or wants women back in the kitchen making them a sandwich or something like that.
Kind of like think before you sleep, because that's all he does. He just rants on women, and he's like, feminism has ruined women, and it's like, no, it hasn't.
No, there's still plenty of women out there, you know, that want that, you know, kind of lifestyle. It's, I mean, it's a choice. Like they act like the freedom of something is an obligation, and it's like no, it's giving you the freedom to do it if you want to. You don't have to if you don't want to. You don't have to.
Right. And in another video of Think Before You Sleep, like in the beginning of this video, he shows like teenage women or teenage girls trying to get someone's help for changing a tire, and he's like, "Look what feminism has done to women," and it's like, they're teenagers. They're not like, you know, any teenager. Every teenager would have like a trouble with, you know, changing their tire of the car somewhere, you know?
Well, I know I sure did the first time I had to do it, but, you know, maybe their excuse on that is, well, but you're a homosexual. It's just like, well, is it a choice or not? You know, come on, make up your mind.
And you're a male.
Well, nobody had taught me how to do it, so I was there, you know, just trying to figure it out on my own. I thought I did a pretty good job considering. But so on this documentary, Pray Away, I think you said that this was a hard documentary for you to watch as well. Like, it was very, very touching to me. Like, I mean, it hit home pretty hard.
It was hard, like in a couple spots, but I pulled through it really good.
So, like, what was your perception and what was your takeaway, like, as a trans woman listening to that trans woman talk about how, oh, I used to be trans and
yeah, that trans woman masquerading as a cis man, telling that one mother that quote her son is like only like not being true, quote, being true to himself or something like that.
So what did you analyze from that? Like, what are your critiques of that individual? Give me your thoughts.
Terrible. I would tell that trans woman, hey, look, you're causing mental trauma to somebody else, and you're going to regret it later in life.
One of the things that I noticed, and I mean, you know, she says that she's not trans anymore, but, you know, looking at her mannerisms, the way that she speaks, so just everything, it's just like
the soft spokenness of her.
She was very feminine. It's just like look like if you're not trans, at the very least you are a bottom boy, you are a femme boy, you know, at the very least.
because her voice um, is either like the stereotypical gay or is um, trying to still has that reminiscence of being trying to present as women, but also trying to physically present as a cis man, you know?
Well, it was almost like she was trying really hard to present as a cis male, and it just wasn't
Yeah,
working.
no, it's just not working.
No, it wasn't working
But
at all.
she is the leader of Freedom March, which I think should be shut down because, you know, it's just going to cause mental trauma to a lot of trans people.
And one of the things that I noticed personally when she was talking is that, you know, she engaged in things like prostitution and drug use, and she would say, well, you know, like she was trying to make a causal link between being trans and drug use and prostitution and some kind of
And
irresponsible behaviors.
she was blaming her trans identity on those things. Like, oh, I used to be trans and I did all this shit, but I went to conversion therapy and it just fixed me and I'm no longer that way. That was basically what she said in the beginning.
I don't think that all, you know, like I don't think being trans has anything to do with drug abuse and
No,
prostitution. I think that's an individual
no,
choice, isn't it?
right. They they don't correlate with each other, you know?
Well, and I mean, you're not a prostitute. You don't engage in drug use, and you're a trans
No,
woman. You don't do any of
no.
that.
I mean, I vape, but I don't really consider
Yeah.
vape a drug.
Well, no, you vape with no nicotine too.
No.
And that's what I mean. That was, you know, some of the language that I had a problem with is, you know, this is very manipulative stuff. Is that like, it's like, hold on a minute, like, um, you know, like, you being trans, that has nothing to like the individual, the personal choice that you made to engage in prostitution and drug use has had nothing to do with you being trans. Like,
No.
that's all on
There
you.
are trans women who are sex workers, but not all of us are sex workers or prostitutes or
Right.
drug users or anything else
Well, and
or even alcoholics, you know?
it works
Uh,
it
I
works.
think, and I think that back in the day, gays who went through conversion therapy probably said the same thing. They probably said like, "Oh, I used to be a prostitute. I used to be a drug user, but and I used to be gay, but now I'm fixed." And all this was because I was gay. You know, same shit, new coat of paint. You know,
Well, in another direction, it's like, well, what about heterosexual cis people that engage in drug use and prostitution and
they would never blame their sexuality on that shit. They
no,
would never do that.
no one says I'm a prostitute because I'm a heterosexual, or I engaged in drug use because I'm cisgendered. No, nobody does that.
No. That's utterly ridiculous.
But see that you know, that a lot of people who watch me don't seem to understand that that's what I do, is that I analyze arguments, and it's like that's a bad argument, you know, like that doesn't stand to reason. That's not logic and critical thinking or rational to say, well, that.
No, that's the opposite of logical. That's fallacious.
Well, and that's why we call something that's what makes something a fallacy or a deductively unsound argument, is that it's manipulation. You know,
Hmm.
it doesn't stand to logic and reason. Um, and the sad, you know, like within the LGBTQ community, trans people have, you know, historically had the higher suicide rate due to societal suppression of trans people and their identity and their ability to self-express that. And when you
and hard access to hormones, you know,
right,
society was restricting hormone access back in the day.
well, and then you also have to struggle mentally with being in the wrong body.
Mm-hmm.
You have to struggle with that as well. So, and then you have people like this coming along, and the way that it's framed, it's like it's so manipulative because like and I guarantee you, there's a heterosexual cis Christian directing this person on what to say, because we saw that throughout the documentary that many of them that was the case. And
I don't think that trans woman masquerading as a cis woman came up with all of the things that she has said. She probably read everything from like a script or something and rehearsed those lines a few times.
Or has been manipulated herself. But
probably
this is part of the problem of it is, when you have like a trans person going around telling people, oh, I used to be, and now because magic,
and they use detransitioners as a justification for their argument of trans being a choice, but it's not. Detransitioners in the trans community are very, 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 very small, even within the small amount of trans people that there are.
And my understanding, I ran into a bit of information. I don't know if it's true or not, but I did hear that the majority of those who have detransitioned, it's not because they're not trans. It's because of lack of access to things like HRT and reconstructive surgeries.
Mm-hmm.
That was my understanding.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about like right-wing YouTube, they wanted to blow up the fucking detransitioners. They wanted to blow them the fuck up out of proportion and say, hey, look, these detransitioners are all trenders. They all wanted to make them out to be like fucking Milo Stewart or something,
But so then we run into a problem is that you have this trans woman who's saying, I used to be trans, and then I found Jesus, and then I stopped all this other behavior that, the outside behavior that has nothing to do with your gender identity. And so living in a society where, socially and societally you're being pressured that this is not normal, this is not right, this is bad, you can change it. To see somebody come along and say, oh, yeah, you can, because I used to be, and not realizing that person's suicide rate has just gone up 30%, like the potentiality of that has gone up by like 30%, and that in every case of this, of these conversion therapy camps, nobody has walked out. Eventually they come out and they're like, no, I was just suppressing who I am, and it was killing me, and they end up becoming emotionally, mentally scarred, sort of PTSD symptoms from it, and that person isn't talking about that. They're going through the motions, but you don't know the rest. They're not telling you the rest of this. They probably don't even know the rest of the statistics behind it. And
they're not telling you the rest of the story.
Right. They don't tell you what's going on when the camera's off. That they're cutting themselves or burning themselves with cigarette lighters, or because they're not doing drugs anymore. That's a no-no thing in magical Jesus camp. I'm being a bad atheist right now. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But so to see that, so anyone that's for one being raised in that sort of environment, to see somebody say, "I used to be," that might give them a glimmer of hope and acceptance within society, not realizing that doing that is not only mentally traumatizing and damaging, but also puts your potential of committing suicide up like 30%. And that they're gonna listen to it because it's that hope. Like you're, especially like if you're surrounded in, like, if you're in an area of the United States where it's particularly unacceptable, surrounded by socially by people that continuously tell you this and say that it's bad, and to see someone say, "Well, I used to be," and from their perspective, from somebody who let's say lives in a southern state in the middle of nowhere and has very, very anti-LGBT parents and stuff, very Christo-fascist sort of agenda type thing, and has pumped their heads full of this, and they struggle with that. They struggle with acceptance from their family, from their local community. To see someone say, "Well, I used to be," that in their mind, that plant, that this is where the manipulation, the brainwash comes in, of that, like, puts a false sense of security in there, of the false sense of being able to change or be something that you're not. And this was the case that I saw, in...
And the thing about, like, this whole thing about, like, oh, not I'm not gay anymore and shit, and then, and the thing about this is that they're always Christian. You never hear about atheist being not gay anymore. You don't hear about, like, Hindus not being gay anymore or trans anymore. You don't hear about like Muslims not being gay or trans anymore. It's always fucking Christians. It's never anyone else. And that is really suspicious.
Yeah,
as that person as that one psychologist said, it's really cult-like and groupthink.
Well, and
it's the Christians doing this. It's not that being gay is a choice. It's that these people are converting to Christianity and being manipulated into thinking that what they are is a choice.
And that it can be changed. They're being manipulated and brainwashed that it could be changed at all.
Yeah, it's like if people outside of Christianity were changing their identity or their trans identity or their sexuality, then you would probably have more of an argument of whether or not sexuality and gender identity would be a choice, which it's not, because science says it's not. But the thing is that, it's always Christians that are either ex-gay or ex-trans or whatever, and that is very, very bizarre. Why is it always the Christians? Why isn't it anybody else? Why isn't it atheists? Why Hindus? Why isn't it polytheists or Wiccans or witches? You don't hear any of us saying, "Oh, we're not gay anymore. Oh, we're not trans anymore."
I think the closest you'll come to like atheist can, like, be saying, "Oh, I'm not gay." Well, Stephen Fry, he didn't try not to be gay. He just went celibate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's the best you can get on the atheist side, is like, well, I can't make myself not gay, but I can choose not to have sex.
Yeah, that's probably where that's probably where like all the incels are all at. You know?
Well, I don't think that that's a directly healthy decision. I mean, we are
No,
sexual
no.
creatures.
I don't think the majority of people can be celibate.
It's very. I would imagine it to be very very hard, very
Yeah.
difficult.
Most people want to fuck. Okay.
Well, it's a drive. It's it's hardwired in
Yeah.
there in our brain.
Yeah.
Um, but like looking at the homosexuals that were in there. That's what I noticed. Like there was one guy that I noticed in particular that was like sort of the head voice of ex-gay, and the way
Oh,
that
what's his name? John Polk or whatever his name was, something like that.
I'm terrible with names. I he put on a suit and a tie. He had glasses. He had short, dark hair.
Mhm.
Kind of on the chubbier side, a little bit. But
Yeah.
like he started explaining how like it sounded to me like, well, no, he described it as that he thought he was doing everything that he was supposed to. Is that he got a wife, he had 2 kids, and he had the suit and the tie, and he was taking on more masculine roles. And he said, well, for all intents and purposes, what he was taught, he thought this is what they meant. But what wasn't being discussed is that primal urge, that desire for not homosexuality, like sex, but homo-romanticism in general, which is, I think, a mistake
Mhm.
that some of these heterosexuals that are homophobic or, against LGBT people don't understand, is that homosexuality is not just about sex. There's romanticism in there. It's like you go on your first date and you think about that first kiss. You think about like holding hands. You think about like waking up next to your partner in the morning and looking at them in the eyes. That there's romance in
Everyone,
there.
everyone has romantic feelings, unless if you're aromantic or asexual.
So that's a that something they leave out
Well,
all the time is they
well, I mean, if you're asexual, I think you can still have romantic feelings.
but his story really touched me. I mean, I won't lie, like I got teary-eyed when he was telling it. Is
Hmm.
like
And he finished it by saying, "I wanted to be with a man."
well, the story of it, it's the way that he described it. It's like I just I can't even imagine being put in this situation where it's like like he's forced
You're,
himself to be in a relationship with a woman and
he
have
had,
children.
yeah, he had to force his dick to be in that vagina, and I don't think he liked it one bit.
Well, force himself to live this straight lifestyle,
Mhm.
whatever. I think homosexuals do lead straight or whatever, whatever that is. Like the lifestyles are really not all that different.
Heteronormative, or whatever term they use nowadays.
Right, but um what he was saying is that he thought going through the motions was the expectation, but what wasn't being said and what he wasn't saying on stage is that the desire, whether sexual or romantic, was still there. And he didn't
Mhm.
make the connection that that's what they wanted him to get rid of.
Mhm.
He thought just playing the role was all they were asking for, but no, they're the heterosexual straight, like Christian people around him were thinking, no, he's gotten rid of the desire and everything. No, he um, he thought I'm wearing a suit and tie, I'm playing a male masculine role,
even though I don't think he was. He sounded very gay to me, but yeah, like you know, a stereotype kind of thing. But yeah, I'm not judging. I'm just saying, you know, he was kind of feminine when he was
Well,
with his.
in the documentary, they also had like, oh, if you take the lesbians in with the girls and have them put on makeup, they'll make they'll make you attractive to males, and if you gay males, if you play football, you will attract females, and it's like, no, you're just a lesbian wearing makeup, and you're just a gay man playing football.
I think I think they were doing that to try and be more about like getting people into, you know, perceived masculine and feminine roles. Like
Yeah, yeah,
they wanted the women to put on makeup to get into a more feminine state of mind, more feminine roles. They wanted the boys to play
yeah.
football to get more
But
into.
what those Christians don't understand is that regardless if you're straight or not, you can still be stereotypical feminine and masculine. It
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
yeah. You can be
Just
pretty.
because just because you're a lesbian doesn't mean that just because you're a lesbian doesn't mean you're gonna have like fucking short hair, you know? You
The
can have,
just because
you can both be lesbians and have long hair, you know?
Yeah, this is where we have terms like bull dyke and lipstick lesbian. You know, I mean, there's a reason those
Well,
exist.
butch lesbian, I think.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, just because you're a lesbian doesn't mean that you're butch, or just
Right.
because you're a homosexual male doesn't mean that you're feminine. You know,
Yeah, right.
that's
That's feminine.
you could be very cis male, like a very masculine male, and still be a homosexual. And you
Hmm.
can be very cis um, feminine female and still be a lesbian, you know.
And you can be androgynous. You could be a tomboy or a tomgirl and still be straight.
Yeah. So the thing that hit hard to me was, and hearing that guy's story, was trying to imagine myself in that predicament of being in a relationship that I would have no desire to be in. And you know, like because I mean, like, I could tell you right now, like, if I was put in that situation, I'd have to say, well, look, you know, I'm not going to be able to be there for her emotionally, like in a romantic sense. I'm not going to be able to fulfill all of her emotional needs. I can be there for her emotionally, like as a friend, but like I'm not. I've never had romantic or sexual feelings towards women. You know,
No,
that is a foreign thing to me.
right.
But you know, here he is forced into that position, and another thing too.
And it was mentally damaging for both of them.
Well, and also like with the kids, I would have had to have been upfront and been like, look, I can produce an offspring, but I just need you to know, it did not come from me sticking my penis into her vagina. We would have to turkey baste her that shit. You know, I have my brain does not
Or
associate
or syringe that shit, you know?
my brain does not associate female reproductive organs and females in general, as you know, it doesn't make a connection with romanticism or sexual activity at all. It just doesn't make that connection. I'm not going to say, you know, vaginas are gross or something. It's just my brain just doesn't find them sexual at all. So like, and you know, then he started talking about how, you know, many years into this marriage with the kids and everything, and you know, then the gay porn came out, and she found the gay porn and ended up divorcing him. And he didn't talk about this in the documentary, but I wonder what happened with custody of the kids. And I'd be willing to bet that
he probably doesn't have custody, and that she probably took full custody just because, he fell back or whatever. But, he came to that.
Their mental health is probably shit too.
Right. But when he started tearing up, and he's just like, the reality is that, I want to be with a man. And now that he's in, a homosexual relationship, this is what I found very interesting. Did you notice that he looked better? Like, like when he was in this forced marriage with, having this, forced typical family, he I don't think he looked well. Like he was a little bit overweight.
You can contrast, like when he looked in pictures when he's with the women, and when he's like in the interview, there is a difference.
Yeah, he looks so much healthier. So much healthier.
Yeah, he's not as chubby. He looks more fit.
So I mean, like, I think overall because he was mentally happier and like in a relationship with a man, I think that reflected in his physical health.
Yeah, I think when he was with the woman, I think he ate a lot, because I think that would explain why he was obese or chubby.
Probably from
He
depression.
probably consumed a lot of food, because that would be a coping mechanism for uh for him, for his um mental suffering.
Right. But that his story hit me really hard. Like I got teary eyed in that. It's just I mean I can imagine. Like I'm fortunate that I've never been put in. I didn't have to attend anything like that. I had parents that were accepting, but like I tried to put myself like, what if that had happened to me? And the thought of it alone is for lack of a better term, soul crushing. And one of the people that they were interviewing, they said it that way. They said it from a more metaphysical theist perspective of, I had to sell my soul to save it. And I think that to those who are, theistically inclined, I think that would speak more volumes than hearing, me from an atheist perspective of, this doesn't stand to reason, homosexuality isn't a choice, it's involuntary, blah, 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 blah.
Go on.
But I tried to imagine myself in his situation, and it just, it would feel like very depressing, very soul crushing, very dominated, and remiss. I mean, nothing good about that. Like, just miserable. And it was just so sad that it took him so long to get out of that and finally get into a relationship with a guy, and now he's happy. And it's like, man, like the transition is huge. And these organizations, they used a lot of manipulative techniques and like slippery slope arguments against things like gay marriage and such like that.
Well, I do know that you and I have been talking, like, I need to be on HRT, and it's been soul crushing for me that that I haven't been on it yet.
Well, you were taking but you were taking the pills that you had bought, and
Got them from Amazon, yeah.
I think you would do better seeing an actual doctor, and you know they can get away, they can get
Right.
around like the liver thing and get you on injections, and I
Mm-hmm.
think you'll be in much better hands if you do it that way. And
Exactly.
I have a lot of hope for you that you'll be able to get down there and get that done. I want to see that.
Yeah, totally.
So, um, one of the things that they talked about, well, that I definitely wanted to bring up is, you know, like the people that would come into the organization, and and then they, you know, fuck this, I can't change, and then go back to being like just be themselves. Um, you know, they talked about how people who did that, they were dead to them. You know, they didn't exist. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean that shows you like the anti-humanitarianism there. It's just like you don't even care about these people. And
Mm-hmm.
it kind of felt like the way that they were brainwashing and manipulating it seemed like they they really didn't care if you were in mental anguish and miserable or not. They didn't care about that. What
All they cared about was just erasing LGBT from the earth. That's all they cared about.
well it like it's almost like all they cared about is like you're in a relationship with the opposite sex, you have kids, you're fulfilling these gender roles, and that's all that's important, and you're doing God's will, you know, you're doing what God wants you to do. And then, you know, meanwhile they're in complete mental anguish, just completely mentally, emotionally crushed, just fucking crushed. And
Mm-hmm.
it just seems like I don't think they care.
No.
I think
It's like
the
it's
original.
like these conversion therapy places were run by sociopaths.
Yeah, I don't think they actually cared if you attain anywhere close to self actualization or not. They just cared that you were like even if you were just going through the motions, you know, you're doing good. You're being a good thing, and you know, pat on the head. You know, here's a doggy biscuit. You know, you're doing good. You know, every time you do what you're supposed to, here's a doggy biscuit, and they get
Mm-hmm.
rewarded for it. And even though they're just completely emotionally, mentally wrecked. And I think I think the founder, the guy who started Exodus or Ex Gay, I think he cared because he was a homosexual, and he
Mm-hmm.
originally started the group not in this sense. Is that he started as like a sort of what would you call it? And like he wanted it to be like a um because
Like a
he
small community of like gays to talk about their experiences, I think.
yeah, but and it started in a time period when the gay rights was no such, you know, like the 70s or something, like almost no such thing.
Where there was no such thing as gay rights.
Right. And you know, like predominantly socially, societally, it was, you know, a big giant no, don't do this horrible bad nasty thing. And so like if you are a Christian and you did have those thoughts, he wanted to get these people together to talk about it and be like, well, you know, like I'm Christian, society says this is wrong, let's talk about, you know, our romance and attractions towards the same sex and gender. And
Hmm.
he, you know, he ultimately ended up closing the doors because he found out about the suicide rates. That was like LGBT people who joined these conversion therapy camps were 30% more likely to commit suicide than LGBT people who were not in them. Which, LGBTQ people, especially you go back to the 70s and the 80s, the suicide rate was much higher back then. It was just less socially and societally acceptable than, I want to say, modern times, but it seems like we're going back on that currently, doesn't it?
Yeah, because the current trend with the right is to suppress LGBT rights.
The other
they wanna take away gay marriage. They don't want trans people to get access to hormones or express ourselves in our true gender expression. They don't want that. They want us to go back in the closet and be like that LGBT people don't exist.
Yeah, but we do, so.
And there's nothing we can do about it. So deal with it.
And I mean, it's not like we're sociopaths. I mean, like, I bring this up all the again. Like I come from an atheist perspective of meta-ethics and subjective morality, and it's just like, okay, look, there's no victim involved here. This is between two consenting adults, and it's not just consent, it's informed consent. These two adults they both want to do it, they both like it, they're both happy. I mean, there's literally just no victim here. None at all.
No, it's like, why would the divine care about your sexuality or gender expression? Like, why would they care?
I think you should elaborate more on, because I'm not good with this, and you can say this from a theistic perspective that resonates with those who are theistic. I can argue meta-ethics, but when you say things like that, I think that resonates with people who are spiritual.
Mm-hmm. Because all the divine really cares is our relationship with them. Like, in regards to human affairs among other humans, they don't really care, as long as we're not hurting others.
Right. So, one of the other people that they were talking about in there, and this is where Prop 8 came up, was one that became the spokesperson for this organization in the later years. And, they would, that they had the several I used to be a lesbian people, a couple of, I think 3 of them that were...
One of them was a spokesperson for Fox.
And they would make the typical right-wing argument back then of but if we allow for gay marriage, then
it would destroy society, and
it would destroy the family unit. People would start marrying animals and pedophilia.
Being pedophiles.
And since she had an insider's view on that, she was able to even say look, I knew at the time that these were slippery slope arguments. That was their sort of bread and butter, is that ultimately they don't know that that's going to happen, and there's no real reason to think that that is going to happen. I mean, when you start talking about bestiality and zoophilia and pedophilia, that's a completely different argument to be had.
They're not in the same ballpark as homosexuality and transgender identities.
No, they're not, and it's disgusting that people would.
It's disgusting that people correlate that that degenerate behavior with LGBT people.
Right, like many.
But I mean, we're not saying that there aren't LGBT people that are into zoophilia and are pedophiles, because obviously anyone could be a pedophile if they have like certain mental trauma that would force them, that would influence them to think that was okay. You know, in order to have the mindset of a pedophile, your morality will have to be so out of whack that it can't be explained why.
Trying to figure.
You know?
Yeah. Well, statistically, shoulder. Okay, here we go. There we go. Statistically, like if you look at statistics of the known pedophiles that we have locked up, well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news to these Christian fundamentalists, but 98% of them are heterosexual, and a majority of them are heterosexual males. Very small group is heterosexual females, and actual homosexuals that make up or LGBTQ in general that are pedophiles is tiny, like 0.1% or something like that. It's
yeah, but unfortunately
small.
you did date one at some point.
I did, and I turned him into the police because I find that absolutely abhorrent. You know, like I went through some physical abuse as a child, not by my parents, but by a babysitter, and you know, pedophilia, that's a form of child abuse. That's not something I hate it with an absolute passion. I don't believe in the death penalty or anything like that. I don't support capital punishment, but you know, there was a part of me when he went off to prison, a part of me that was like, I really hope one of the inmates find out what he's in there for and kill him. Because they do that to pedophiles in prison. So a part of me was kind of hoping that would happen. But, so, you know, you had this spokesperson, you know, this, I used to be a lesbian, and then, well, lo and behold, she goes back to being a lesbian. But she even said, you know, these were slippery slope arguments, and, you know, if anyone took the time to actually analyze them, easily debunked. Easily.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that I was going to mention before we went off on that is that many of these people that were spokespeople for ex-gay, they continued to remain to be of the Christian faith. They just found churches that were LGBTQ accepting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they didn't turn into atheists or anything, but they tried to find churches that were accepting of LGBTQ people. But the guy that happened around Prop 8 that really hit me and made me a little teary-eyed was, you know, like I said in the beginning of this, is that, you know, the blue states were playing the game that the right, the Republican Party, wants to play, and doing small government, and said, oh, well, you know, we're going to allow it in our state. Well, then Prop 8 comes along under George W. Bush Jr., and what Prop 8 was designed to do was to stop the states, was the federal government stepping in and telling these states, no, you can't do that. And it's like, well, you know, that's really big government. That's really big government.
And then the states say, well, Republicans, I thought you were for small government.
Well, and the thing that was really disappointing is that
Prop 8 actually passed. And I remember when I forgot about it, but when I watched the documentary, it came back to me. This was a really big deal. This was a huge blow. And it was really sad. And honestly, I didn't think I was going to see gay marriage within my lifetime because of the things that these were, like when I hear, certain leftist commentators on YouTube talk about like, we want to see neocons again instead of these conservatives today that sort of push Christo-fascist agendas. Like looking back,
it's like no, you don't. You don't want people like George Bush back in office.
Well, I don't know that much is what I was going to say is that I don't know that much has really changed. It seemed like they were just as much Christo-fascist. And
the only difference between George W. Bush Jr. and the current day Republicans is that George W. Bush wasn't as extreme. He wasn't a fascist.
Yeah, that's about the only. But he still had that bigotry towards LGBT people, LGBTQ.
Yes.
And so Prop 8 passed, and the guy towards that was towards the latter end of ex-gay, he was, who became a spokesperson. He saw all these LGBTQ people rallying up, and you had candlelight vigils, and they had their protest signs, and they were embracing each other, and they ultimately were trying to appeal to the federal government to get rid of Prop 8 and don't support this. And you took away the state's ability to even allow us to get married, and they were we were playing your game of limited government. This is what California wanted to do. What were some of the other states that were allowing it? I know
Washington, Oregon, I think. I think it was Illinois, Pennsylvania, New York. I forget other ones.
Kansas.
I'm pretty sure were the states that were for the legalization of gay marriage.
Oh, and they were doing it at the state level. That's the thing. And so then here comes the limited government party, passes Prop 8 and tells the states they can't do that. Kansas was one of those states, too. They made gay marriage acceptable in Kansas. It was a case won out of it was a case won out of Gardner, Kansas, that went to court between these two lesbians, and they won, and so Kansas started allowing gay marriage. Like I said, then Prop 8 happened, and none of the states could do it until Obama came along and the Obergefell v. Hodges thing happened, which now the Supreme Court is talking about trying to overturn.
So they're going to try and bring back probate.
I hope they don't bring back. Well, if they overturn Obergefell v. Hodges, it's like, are they going to try to do a Prop 8, or are they going to let the states decide for themselves, like they talk about?
I don't think they're taking into account as to how many gay people are married within this country. There's millions of gay people in this country, and I think a lot of them are married. And that's a lot of marriages that are just like fucking invalid overnight, and it's like that would cause an uproar in like society, in our society.
Well, as it should, like when Prop 8 passed. But see, this is what got me so bad. It got me teary-eyed. Is when he started crying, and he's like, it was so liberating to see my people come out like that and try to support our rights. And at the time, he was, a spokesperson for ex-gay, so he was a usurper. And somebody came up to him and said, you have blood on your hands. And asked him, how do you feel about having all that blood on your hands? Because the suicide rates of the people that were in this was so high. And his only response, he's saying this, trying to hold back the tear. Like he wanted, you could see in this documentary, he wanted to just bust out into tears, and he's trying to hold it back. And he says, I don't know. All I know is that I don't want to look down, or I can't look down at my hands. He went against his, like seeing his people get together like that, I think sort of woke him up to the brainwash that he had been indoctrinated. That was the word I was looking for earlier. Indoctrinated into believing.
Or brainwash that he was inflicting upon his own people.
Well, yeah, he came to, like, hold on, I've been brainwashed, and he was basically saying I'm culpable in brainwashing shit tons of LGBTQ people into thinking they can change when they can't, increasing their suicide rates. A bunch of people have committed suicide, and I don't think his conscience will ever be clean from that, ever.
No, I don't think he'll ever forgive himself.
And that seems to be a recurring theme with a lot of the spokespeople that they brought on through Ex-Gay, was that one of the PTSD portions was the struggle to forgive themselves for what they did to LGBT people.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you had that lesbian in her psychiatrist or psychologist's office, just in tears, like trying to forgive herself for what she's done. So one of the things that in today's day and age, I mean, I'll get back to something else they said in the documentary, but today's day and age, places like Texas and Arizona, when Clarence Thomas, presented this, I'm going to overturn Roe v. Wade, I'm going to overturn Lawrence v. Texas, I'm going to overturn Obergefell v. Hodges. Then they overturn Roe v. Wade, and then suddenly in states like Texas and Arizona, they pop up, well, we're bringing back conversion therapy camps. And one of the sort of apologist views that was given to me on this was, but they say that it's optional. And the thing is like, after watching this documentary, you realize, well, it was always optional. The problem...
But eventually they're so brainwashed in that it's no longer an option. It's no longer a choice.
That's what's misunderstood, is it's like, well, it's always been an option, but what they do is they spread this propaganda and they indoctrinate...
That you have to come here to fix yourself.
They spread this propaganda, and they brainwash you, indoctrinate you, and make you think, for one, this is possible, and two, that it could, that it's, I don't know that there is a two, it's just that it's possible when it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is, like, let's say you have somebody that, again, you have people in a community, society, socially, that are surrounded by people that are disapproving, and they tell you that they're heterosexuals, telling you, oh, it's a choice, you don't have to be, it's an illness, you just need to find Jesus, blah, 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 blah. And then you see somebody who says, oh, I used to be a lesbian, and I'm telling you, you can stop being a lesbian, or I used to be a homosexual male, and you can stop being a homosexual male, or I used to be trans, and you can stop being trans. And that's extremely powerful brainwashing propaganda, especially for those that that are seeking acceptance. They're looking for that glimmer of hope to like stop the societal and social pressure and stigmatization and whatnot. So it seems like a nugget of hope, and all it is a giant lie. It's a facade. So it's like, well, it's always been an option, but for people who are desperate, it's easy to fall into. It's a trap, It's like there's other forms of like pseudoscience and stuff that's extraordinarily harmful and hurtful that we seek out to try and ban because
like faith healing.
Right, like the psychic surgeries or something like that, and it's like this stuff is very, very harmful. It's like you're not talking about brainwash that's benign. You're talking about borderline Jonestown,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Edgy Intellect says it's not optional for the kids who get put in there by their parents. That's another thing I've talked about myself, is that the other problem with, it's optional. Well, if you're a 16-year-old and you come out to your parents and oops, come to find out your parents are against LGBTQ people and they're, extremist Christian fundamentalists or something like that. At 16, you're still technically your parents' property, and they could put you in the camp whether you want to be there or not. So, but the big thing that I really focused on is that ex-gay, like these conversion therapy camps, they were always optional. And how they got people in there was through brainwash.
Mm-hmm.
And regardless that it was optional and that they got in there through brainwash, their potentiality, their risk of suicide shot up by 30%. That's dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
That's very, very dangerous. And the ones that didn't commit suicide are so psychologically traumatized. They're psychologically traumatized for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I don't see how they can recover from that.
They can't.
No. I do feel bad for the trans woman masquerading as a cis man, because she's not being true to herself.
Well, and what we're not seeing, what we come to find out from the previous spokespeople that, used to be gay or used to be lesbian, from ex-gay, from the conversion therapy camps before, is that what you don't see off camera is the psychological trauma that they're going through, and the doubt and the struggle, because
you don't see the tears shed. You don't see them going like, I wish I could be a woman, or I wish I could express myself, I wish I could be gay or something.
Like that I still feel this way.
Yes.
Yeah. And you had that one lesbian speaker that was a spokesperson for ex-gay. She when the cameras went off, she engaged in bodily harm. She was burning herself with like the little cigarette lighters and stuff like that. And I saw at the end of the documentary, when she was getting married to her now wife, she still had all the scars on her arms from it. You could see it when she was wearing the dress.
Mm-hmm.
So, another thing that I really wanted to talk about was like trying to reverse role this. And before I do that, the other thing was, the bisexual aspect is that one of the original spokespeople, I used to be a lesbian, one of the females from back in the 80s, she found out that the reason why she could be with a guy was because, well, she was bisexual. And that's something that, they didn't take into account. But they would do things like tell you can't have gay pornography. You can't hang out with you weren't, like, if you were a lesbian, you weren't allowed to associate with other women outside the organization unsupervised. If you associated with another woman, it had to be supervised. And they did the same for the gay men. Is that you couldn't hang out with other guys outside of the organization. You had to do that supervised. And they said that you didn't have to be, like they said, like one of the gay guys said that they would tell him, you don't have to be attracted to all women, just one. And that's the one that you're going to marry. And
they sure do make it sound like an option, don't they?
Right. I mean, this is highly oppressive stuff,
Yeah.
So I wanted to reverse role to like let's say that we lived in a society that was more accepting of homosexuality and homoromanticism over heterosexuality and
yeah, like, imagine if there was conversion therapy for heterosexuals.
Well, it's like to the straight people out there, it's like, okay, like, what if we sent you to a re-education camp where we told you that, well, of course you're gay, of course you are. Everyone is, you're just not doing it right, like speaking, like if I was speaking to a male, it's like, well, all you have to do is start being a little bit more feminine and get, start playing with makeup and dresses and stuff and start this is what God wants for you. He wants you to be more
like same with, like, if we were to take, like, cis people and make them trans, like oh, take these hormones and it'll make you feel good if you express yourself as the other gender or as non-binary. You this is who you are. This is who you're meant to be. Okay, just
give it time.
Just trust me, bro.
Yeah, just give it time. Let yourself settle in.
Just let it flow. Just let it settle in.
7 years later, still struggling. That's okay. Give it another 50 years, still struggling. That's okay. Oh, you're dead now. Well, you did the right thing, and you don't have to be, like, as a male, you don't have to be attracted to all guys. You just have to be attracted to one. And that one guy is the guy that you're going to marry. And you know what? Mm-hmm. If you're not able to get an erection, and don't worry about it. That's okay. Maybe he will be able, the guy you're with will be able to get an erection. That's just God's way of saying that you're meant to be the bottom. And if this doesn't feel right at first, if it's hard for you at first, that's okay. Just give it time and give it time to let yourself set in and accept this. This is how it's supposed to be. This is what whatever higher power or authority wants you, and this is the way it's supposed to be. And I would ask that person, like, as a like putting a heterosexual in that situation, like, how do you think it would feel to be manipulated and brainwashed into being into a relationship with another man and doing sexual things that you don't feel comfortable doing? How do you think that would make you feel? Like, I can tell you would be, just as these homosexuals were put in that situation regarding heterosexuality, emotionally destroyed.
Yeah.
mentally and emotionally oppressed, suppressed, distraught, destroyed, and crushed.
And make you feel that you just want to die.
Yeah, C.R. Williams said not very well. No, I imagine you wouldn't feel very well. It'd feel fucked up.
Yeah, if you were to give like hormones to a cis person, you you probably would feel very, very depressed.
Well, like,
And
I may be a homosexual, but like I'm a cis male, and I can tell you, like, if I started growing breasts, like, I wouldn't be very happy about that. I mean, I
yeah,
feel I feel like I kind of,
you would be like, ew, breast. No, ew. You know?
well, it's kind of like, I mean, since my pectoral minor was detached from my shoulder, I feel like I've got a little boob growing over here, and sometimes I look at it, it's shaped like a boob and stuff, and I'm like, oh, that is so depressing. It shouldn't be there. Shouldn't be like that. Oh man. Let's see. The thing I would ask some of these, is it a choice? Types. When did you choose to be attracted to the opposite sex? Yeah, and that's, I've heard that many times over the years, and that I brought that up earlier, actually, is that one thing that these people, like the theist that says it's unnatural. Well, it's unnatural to them because they're heterosexual. It doesn't feel natural to me to be with a female. It would feel unnatural to you as a heterosexual man to be with another man. Of course that would feel unnatural. You're heterosexual.
My cat wants to be on camera.
Let's say hello to the people, to the internet. I thought about bringing the bunny out, but no, we made a playpen for her, so she's having a good time in the playpen. Don't want to bother her, and the cat is obsessed with the rabbit, and she wants to go wherever the bunny is. So yeah, that's the level of brainwash and manipulation and indoctrinating that these conversion therapy camps put homosexuals through, and they've always been an option, always. The thing is they utterly go out of their way to try to convince you, like, no, if you go through the motions, eventually it will stop. And, well, no, it turns out it doesn't stop, and all it does is do extraordinary amounts of
Psychological damage.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine, like put yourself in that trans woman's shoes that was in there. I used to be trans, and I used to do drugs and engage in prostitution. That person, like, can you imagine, like, put yourself in that position where you've been brainwashed into thinking that, and suppressing your own internal urge and desire to express yourself and as a female, and suppressing that, what that would feel like over so many years. What do you think that would do to you mentally?
Like, I want to die.
That's how I, like, through empathy and sympathy, through the gay man that went through the relationship with the female and had the kids and everything. That's kind of what went through my mind, is like, man, if I was put in that, like, I think I'd want to, like, I'd feel like I'd want to die. I'd come to the same conclusion he did. I want to be with a man.
Mm-hmm.
If someone wants to go through it, even as their choice, what is also their choice is to leave the camp. Oh yeah, in the documentary they mentioned that a lot of people did leave the camps, and as they mentioned, that those who did leave the conversion therapy camps, suddenly you're dead to them. You don't exist. You be homeless on the street. Who cares? They're corrupted. That was the other thing, is that if
you were in one of these camps and you did associate with the same sex, like if you were a lesbian and you associated with another female, especially a lesbian, or if you were a homosexual male and you associated with another male, especially another homosexual male, that was a transgression, and you'd have to confess to it. You'd have to do confessions. And yeah, it's very cultish, very cult-like. And if you had engaged in romanticism or homosexuality, that was a big transgression. You not only would you have to confess, but you'd have to do some kind of penance or something like that. Like they would mentally chastise you and make you feel like a pariah if you did that. That was a big no. Like that one guy that we were talking about earlier that got healthier when he actually got with a man, when he was with the woman, that was the thing that caused the church to break them up and lose custody of his kids is quite simply gay porn.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Well, these are Christian fundamentalists. C.R. Williams asked, what do these morons have to gain by doing this to people? These are Christian fundamentalists, and they think they're doing God's work. And like I said, that's the interesting thing. A lot of these ex-gay people, the people who are spokespeople for these conversion therapy camps, even though they came back to accepting that they are homosexual and there's nothing they can do about it with all the psychological trauma and everything, they're still Christians. They just found, churches that are more accepting of LGBTQ people. Like I was so happy, and I kind of had tears of joy when I saw the lesbian, who was a spokesperson for ex-gay, when it showed her with her fiance walking down the aisle to get married to her, now wife. Mm-hmm. And it was just such a happy occasion. It's just like, oh my God, now you finally get to be who you actually are. And mm-hmm. I mean, you could see the joy in her and everything, and going back to the forced, manipulated heterosexual lifestyle, and you could just, like I said, you could see all the scars on her arm from going through all that, and she talked about how this priest or clergy member, this member of the church would tell her, well, you need to talk more about how you were raped when you were young, so you can blame your homosexuality on your hatred towards men for being raped, because everyone who's raped mm-hmm. ends up, I'm being facetious here, but I could bring up the example Jonathan Davis from Korn. He was sodomized. He was sodomized and raped by his stepfather, and he's not gay. He's straight. But that they wanted to play on that aspect. They found this aspect out about her history, that she had been raped by a guy when she was young, and this spiritual leader would sit there and tell her over and over and over again that I think in your speeches you should include that you were raped, and play on that aspect that you were raped and therefore you hate men and that's why you're a lesbian. And she'd say, well, I don't feel comfortable doing that. That's a little bit too personal. And, she would give a speech and she wouldn't mention it. And so they'd be in the car together and he'd be like, I really liked your speech, but I got to tell you, I'm really disappointed that you didn't bring up that rape. And this is how the indoctrinating stuff works, to try and get her to come on stage and say, hey, I used to be a lesbian. I hate men because I was raped by a guy. Even though that's just not the case. That's not true.
So, Edgy Intellect says there are so many, so much better gods and goddesses out there than the Sky Wizard. That's more your domain as a polytheist.
The cat knocked over this, so.
And C.R. Williams, my fellow atheist, says, Jesus is my anchor. When Satan rocks the boat, I throw Jesus overboard. Oh, CR, you should rewind a little bit and look at when we were talking about Prop 8, because that was an interesting thing that they brought up in the documentary, is that when the states were playing small government, the states that were like, well, it's not federally legal, but California, Oregon, Washington, even Kansas, they were New York, Illinois. They said, well, we're going to allow it. Then George W. Bush Jr. steps in and says, oh, we're going to introduce Prop 8 and get the states to stop doing that. So I found that to be interesting. That's something I completely forgot about until I watched the documentary. I was like, oh yeah, Prop 8 happened. That was a big deal. That was huge when that happened. But no, the Prop 8 was to stop gay marriage, not for gay marriage. It was to stop gay marriage in all the states that were allowing it. And it passed. And then, Barack Obama came in, and Obergefell v. Hodges happened, and it was overturned. So now we have...
But to go back on, what Edgy Intellect said about, there's different gods and goddesses, there's lots of myths in Indo-European religions of different people being in same-sex marriages, and even gods are in same-sex or not marriages but relationships, where even gods are in same-sex relationships with both immortals and mortals.
Pan is probably one of the more interesting ones.
Yeah, the forest god. But I think Mercury or Hermes was one of the gods that were one of his attributes was hermaphroditism, I think, or something like that. I know that with Aphrodite or Venus, they had a child who went by Hermaphroditus, which is where we get the word hermaphrodite from.
It's interesting how a lot of these polytheistic gods come to make words today. Like narcissism comes from Narcissus.
Narcissus. He wasn't really a god. He was more of just some person who was just infatuated with himself by looking in a mirror.
But on the spiritual aspect of it, like I said, I'm arguing the metaphysics and stuff like that. The metaphysics. It's difficult for me to do as an atheist, and I don't think I always make arguments that resonate with people who are theists. So,
like I said in a discussion a few days ago, you might as with hardline theists, hardcore theists, you might as well just take your science and rationality and just throw it out the window, because that's all it's good for at that point.
Yeah, then I mean, if you do when you do debate them as an atheist, you start to get, like I said, down that rabbit hole of trying to explain metaethics, and it's like, oh, geez, there's a lot to go over. Shit,
Yeah,
I don't have
it,
time. That
it goes back to the discussion of a few days ago with totally not Bill, that hardcore Christian from Greece.
Yeah, I don't have
He
time to write a college textbook on metaethics.
he thinks that all of the polytheists are 40-year-old LARPers. All of the polytheists that are in Greece. He thinks that every single one of them that practice the Hellenic modern polytheist movement, he thinks they're all LARPers. They're all 40 fucking year olds, and it's like that is a very inaccurate claim, and it's just a gross generalization or a gross overgeneralization, you know.
And Edgy Intellect says that the story of Narcissus is misunderstood. He fell into the image not out of self-obsession, but because he thought it was another person. I thought that he fell in love with his own reflection.
Yeah, he was looking at his own reflection in a pond or in a mirror, and he looked at it. He looked at a pair, and as the myth goes, he looked at himself in that pond until he died.
I had heard the version where he fell into it. I would imagine that it was like the thinking it was another person makes sense, in the sense that, like, you know, he's looking at his reflection and he falls in love with it, thinking it's another person, falls into it, trying to catch this other person, not even realizing it's himself.
Hmm. Well, I'm pretty sure there's multiple versions of the myth, as that is common with Indo-European mythologies,
But like I said,
especially Greek mythology.
like I said, one of the spokespersons for ex-gay, the one that was towards the latter end of ex-gay, I think he put it very, very well for theists. He said, I had to sell my soul to save it, according to them. I think that resonates with theists, you know. You don't want to do that, right? I mean, I don't know. I don't believe in a soul, so I'm assuming you don't want to sell your soul to save it.
No, my soul like gets reincarnated anyway. Like half of it gets reincarnated, and the other half goes to the underworld. So it's like selling it just doesn't make sense.
Not a wise decision.
No.
So one of the things too that they brought up is, well, I mean, you know, I wish I want to say I wish we could make conversion therapy just outright illegal. I don't think you can, though. But one of them brought up a good point, is that, like, even though across the board, psychologically, psychiatry, both the soft science and the hard science,
the hard science
have both condemned conversion therapy. You know, it's been proven time and time again. Suicide rates increase. This is emotionally, psychologically, mentally harmful.
And they even mention in the documentary that like the person that used to lead ex-gay said that these people are not psychologists. They're not therapists. They have no credentials in any scientific field. So it's like, why take these people at their word? You know.
But what they said is that as long as homophobes exist, as soon as one conversion therapy camp closes, unfortunately, as long as homophobes exist, another one's gonna pop up.
Yeah, because when ex-gay was shot down, what was the new one that popped up like a year later?
The one that the trans woman
worked with.
That was Freedom March. I'm talking about the other one.
It was a church. I forget what the name of it was, but
It was the something network. I don't remember the full name. I know it had network in it.
But yeah, like, so the original creator of ex-gay, he was a homosexual that was attending church back in the 70s, and like we talked about, socially, societally, completely almost not acceptable at all. Anti-sodomy law is still in place and everything. Could ruin your life, go to jail, all kinds of stuff. But there, I'd say back in the 70s, I think there was a major push towards LGBT rights, more so than previous to that. But still, when he saw the psychological damage and trauma this was causing, and when he looked at the suicide statistics, man, he felt bad. And he was the CEO, and so here's the CEO of ex-gay coming in and closing the doors himself and saying, as a result of all the psychological and physical harm this has done, we are closing the doors. And then he did that group therapy session where the people who were in the gay people who were in the upper echelons that became the spokespeople for ex-gay, they went into this group therapy session with him, and they just ripped into him, like tears just rolling down their eyes, and they're up in their seat yelling and screaming at him like, what have you fucking done to me? What have you done?
Mm-hmm.
And most of them have gone back to accepting who they are and have better lives now, but they still got to deal with that psychological
trauma that was inflicted upon them.
Yeah, it's really bad, and so it's like we may not be able to make them illegal or completely shut them down, but
Because if we tried to make them illegal, it's not that wouldn't really stop them from cropping up.
No, you can't stop somebody from saying, well, I used to be gay, but I found Jesus and that fixed everything. The freedom of religion, right to believe whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, like I said, this particular type of stuff, this particular shit, it leads to a very high suicide rate and a very large amount of psychological damage.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I think there should be like a push, like it'd be good to have a good push of information out there, condemning these things and making sure that they're not popular.
I think a significant number of the population already condemns conversion therapy.
Well, when we already have the proof, like overwhelming proof and evidence that it doesn't even work,
Right.
And to be honest with you, like ex-gay was one of the more tame ones. There's examples of conversion therapy camps where, I mean, you literally
they're more aggressive.
Well, and they talked about this in the documentary that when ex-gay formed it, there was sort of this business arrangement with, uncredentialed psychologists who basically would torture their fucking patients.
Mm-hmm. Put shock therapy on their genitals.
Yeah, and that's something I've there's another documentary on Netflix that talks, it's that Haunted series where people come into the room and they talk about their story, like it was James something or other, I forget his last name, but he's a gay rights activist now. He was sent into I think it was I can't remember the name of the church. It was a horrible, horrible church organization, though, where when they took him in, they hosed him down with they stripped him naked, hosed him down with cold water, in just a giant, cement room, and they stuck him in like a itty bitty tiny little cage, with his hands cuffed to the cage above his head, with his toes barely able to touch the floor, and kept there for days. And then like brutally sodomized with objects by the security and stuff in there to teach him a lesson. And when he came out of it, now he's a huge LGBT activist that works on getting LGBT teens that have been disowned by their parents off the streets so they don't become homeless and get the help that they need. Yeah, those C.R. Williams said those psychologists should be put in silver bracelets. Yeah, they should not be allowed to practice. It's when you're causing psychological harm and literally torturing.
They should be barred from practicing psychology.
Well, when you get into actual physical abuse, then yeah, they do need to be locked up. They do.
Yeah.
Hold on,
and the thing is, like, if you were a licensed psychologist doing that shit, you would have your license revoked, and you could never practice psychology again.
Yeah. So, like, now that they're, being reinforced, you have some conservative states that are coming forward like, we want to bring back conversion therapy camps. It's like,
why?
Shit, what do we do? Like, we're talking about like massive indoctrination, brainwashing, and manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on just a second, I'll be right back. I'm gonna get some more water. Ugh, unprofessional Jinx. Stepping away from the camera to get water in the middle of a live stream.
At least you're not like Hassan. Hassan, when he does live streams on Twitch, he'll leave and he'll be gone for like, I don't know how long. I never watched his streams, but there's a whole bunch of compilations on YouTube when he leaves and his chair is just empty for long periods of time. Like he's either cooking something or doing something else, and people in the chat are just sitting there wondering what's going on. They all keep typing away, and it's like, what are you doing?
I've seen a few YouTubers do it. I've seen a few of them. But, I mean, yeah, that documentary was very, very hard for me to watch. Like I said, I got teary-eyed a few times. I won't deny it. I won't.
Same with Tim.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the trans bits was hard for me to watch.
But I like the way that they did it, because they at first when you start watching the documentary, it sort of feels like it's pro-conversion therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're doing is they're painting the picture for you that you have to understand the way that this the way that these camps work.
Like you were saying that you said that half of it, like one half was pro conversion therapy and the other half was against conversion therapy.
Well, it's almost like they wanted to take you through the actual like lived experience, so you understood the state of mind and the level of indoctrinating that was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so like that's something
Like
that
the documentary wanted you to basically put yourself in the shoes of what it's like to be in a conversion therapy camp.
yeah, so they start you off with, all you hear is like, well, it is a choice. I used to be. I used to be. I used to be. And as it moves closer and closer to
Closer to
today,
the end.
you start like, that's when you start finding out like, and they have a middle too. They have the middle too where they go through the struggle internally of like, like I'm going through the motions, but I still have the desire. So that's like the middle, and then at the end, it's just like, no, fuck the conversion therapy. That fucked me up, and it was horrible. And I would say anyone that has gone through them that didn't commit suicide, I'd call them survivors. I would say that they're survivors.
Mm-hmm.
But now that it's rolling out, and you've got states that are not condemning it but condoning it. It's like, well, what's the next bold move? Like how do you keep people out of that from going through that sort of mental torment and that
Yeah,
torture?
and with the states like Arizona and Texas or whatever you said, that's probably gonna that says, oh, they're gonna bring back conversion therapy. That probably is giving uh, previous conversion therapy survivors uh, Vietnam flashbacks.
Edgy Intellect said they deserve the word survivor. They really do. I mean, if you haven't seen the documentary, I highly recommend it. I think it's one of those documentaries that is like a must see, especially for LGBTQ people. The documentary itself, I think, is good information that gives insight into how those organizations work to try and keep people out of it. And
There's
I
a there's a ton of people complaining about Netflix right now for whatever reason. They probably think that there's no content on there, but the documentary Pray Away is really good.
oh yeah, and if you want to see like a different version of conversion therapy where you really talk about huge physical abuses, there's that Haunted series. There's one. The reason why it's on Haunted is because he said that he thought that the people, I think that was the name of the organization, People of the Church. Um, he said that he thought that they were demons because what they were doing to him.
Hmm.
Um, so that's located on Netflix as well. Maybe I can. I've Googled it before. Maybe I can find it. Um, yeah, the name of the episode is called "Cult of Torture." His name, the survivor's name is James Swift, and he is now a huge activist because of what he went through.
Um, Yeah, it says James Swift is a conversion therapy survivor of a horrific torture camp that was located in Louisiana. In this gruesome camp, he was beat, sodomized, starved, caged, staff to perform shock treatment, tied him up, and was a complete victim of sex trafficking, all in the name of changing his sexual orientation. He was only a 15-year-old boy. In spite of walking through this fiery journey of a living hell, he is on a mission to tell his story in order to prevent child abuse in teen programs. He was on Utopia, Fox Network, and won Next Generation Indie Book Award for his book Rusted Rhinestones in 2016. James Swift has transformed his darkness into a light for homeless children to have a chance at a new beginning. As a young boy of 15, his own parents ostracized him from the family, and he was tossed into the wild jungle of the streets of New Orleans. The cold-hearted truth of fending for himself hit, and he felt that he had no other recourse than to resort to prostitution. This led to more beatings, rape, and it spiraled down a dysfunctional journey of despair. After reaching rock bottom, he started pulling himself out of the muck of an endless, deep swamp. He learned a couple of trades as a hairstylist and massage therapist. He was able to not only support himself, but his brother, who was also shunned from the family. Most people would have thrown in the towel, crawled into a hole, resorted to suicide, but James Swift persevered in spite of those rough waters of an unforgiving storm. He finally calmed the unruly weather conditions that was heading for his path with his compassionate heart. Every cent of rusted rhinestones will be donated to helping children find a better path. He is raising money to open a shelter in order to help homeless children form a better direction. There will be classes to learn a trade, a safe environment, meals, and a warm place to sleep. This will be the facilitator of empowerment. The name of it is helpforkids.org, is helping kids find a home that isn't the streets. And when I'm done, I can leave the link in the description so that people can go and read that if they want. I can go ahead and I can go ahead and link it here in the chat. There we go. That's about James Swift. And, if I'd had a bigger platform, suggesting to go and donate might do some more good, but I don't have that big of a platform, so.
I don't either. If they're not going to listen to you, they're not going to listen to me.
But one good thing, though, is that the founder, the CEO of XGay, of Exodus, after he closed the door, he created XGay for those who left XGay and reaffirmed and accepted, their status as LGBTQ. And so one of the things that XX Gay does is they do go and they form counter arguments to these conversion therapy camps and try to inform people to stay away from them. So that's a good thing. But, maybe there should be more because, like I said, if you have states propping up that are condoning this, it's like, no. They should not be condoned in any way, shape, or form.
No.
Especially when you have nobody from academia supporting them at all. Like, it's...
No. I thought Arizona was more of the liberal states.
I could be mistaken on that. Thank goodness for Google, right? I'm just human. I'm not perfect. I try to do my best to remember everything that I can, but I'm not a magic angel, baby.
Well, you did say like the governor of Arizona or something is a huge fanboy of like the Unabomber.
Oh yeah, that governor that got elected. Yeah, he's an interesting piece of work. He's pretty much openly neo-Nazi, and his hero is the Unabomber. Which I don't understand because the Unabomber is a radical, extreme anarchist.
Yeah, he was. The Unabomber wouldn't agree with Nazism if he was an anarchist.
Well, this is listing 3 states that want to do it. Where does it tell me the states? Okay. This is... Oh, okay, that's scary. So I've got a chart. Maybe I can do screen share. Share your screen. Share. So, well, the people who are watching are going to barely be able to see this because my camera is tiny on my end. But, so we have this dark green, which is state law bans conversion therapy for minors. And, basically the majority of your blue states. And then you have this lined... that state partially bans...
The lime green?
Yeah, well, I see stripes, but it says state partially bans conversion therapy for minors. Got very, very few states in that. It seems like the majority is that there's no state law or policy on them whatsoever, which is 22 states and 4 territories. But the one that concerns me is this orange one. It says, state is in federal judicial circuit with a preliminary injunction currently preventing enforcement of conversion therapy bans. So you can't ban conversion therapy. They actively keep you from banning conversion therapy, and that's in Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. When was this published? Because recently Texas said they wanted to bring it back, and I read like a bill or something that they wanted to do. It doesn't give me a date.
I think maybe it says on the bottom.
Well, it says this was a set. Oh, accessed 8/3 of 2022. Data current as of 7/25 of 2022. And 11% of LGBTQ population lives in states that actively stop you from banning conversion therapy. Like, you couldn't even ban it if you wanted to.
That's really fucked up.
And CR says the issue is that neither party will compromise in favor of freedom. It ends up always being the opposite. And that's part of the thing is why you can't ban them is because of freedom. But it's like
indoctrinating people should not be like, that should not be looked at as freedom.
Well, like I said, these conversion therapy camps border on the line of
being cults,
like Jonestown. I mean,
yeah,
they're not spiking the Kool-Aid, but they're definitely leading them down a path that increases their risk of suicide.
Yeah.
And if they don't commit suicide, they walk out of there with an atrocious amount of psychological damage.
Yeah, it's like all they're missing is the people saying, if you need us, if you leave, then you shall die,
Yeah, and like they said in the documentary, with the people who leave the conversion therapy camps, they're dead to them. They don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a really good documentary. I really like how they did it. I think it was well done. And I would encourage people to see it. I really would. How long have we been going now?
I think maybe 2 hours.
Yeah, 2 hours. I think we should well, CR asks, yeah, but who gets to decide what is indoctrination and therefore banned? It's the that's what I mean. Like, I would like to see a lot of information out there, trying to keep LGBTQ people away from being indoctrinated and going into them,
Mm-hmm.
That's what you can do, is you can educate people. But I think, 2 hours, we can wrap this up. Do you have any final thoughts or anything that you want to share?
Other than the possibility of conversion therapy places coming into existence in the future is a scary thought, and that it should be looked at as wrong.
Well, yeah, I don't know about the actively preventing them from being stopped states like Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. It's like Alabama, Georgia, and Florida, you're really scary. Because, what if society, like the community as a whole, um, you know, boycotts or protests it, says that they don't want it there. Um, I think that that's well within our rights to do, but according to what I just read, it sounds like you can't even do that. They won't. They'll tell you to sit down and shut up.
They probably went into law and then made conversion therapy like mandatory or something, or somehow to prevent them from being shut down.
Well, and I have to wonder too, is something that is so psychologically damaging, something that could potentially lead to physical abuse, and something that increases the probability of suicide up by 30% over what it already was.
I would say
allowed?
That is a condoning of violations of human rights by making them unable to shut down, you know.
Well, it's just, you have to be so careful, because it's like you want to allow people to have the freedom to their beliefs. I mean, that's part of living in a free society. Mm-hmm. But you want to be careful,
but it's like where is the line to this is acceptable spiritually to this is not acceptable because you are violating human rights? Where is the line? It seems like it's very blurred, you know.
Well, to me, I think you like cults form and stuff, but you want to make sure that you don't end up with another Jonestown.
Yeah.
And
but I mean the thing with like a lot of cults like Yahweh Ben Yahweh, like a lot of cults like that, a lot of them are shut down by police because there is evidence of abuse and pedophilia and other heinous stuff that certain cults do. You know, those are the reasons why they're shut down. They're not shut down because of the religious reasons. They're shut down because of the pedophilia and all the other heinous stuff that cults do to justify through their religion to do. Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think if there's like a good example that of the same thing that isn't LGBTQ, but none really comes to mind.
I could think of one. The Turnabout Ranch. The Turnabout Ranch, that's affiliated with Dr. Phil. He would send teens there, and a lot of teens who grew up spoke out against Turnabout Ranch and said that they were abused, forced to sleep on the floor, and forced them into labor and some other things, and put them in like rooms without like windows or something like that, and it was just utterly horrible, you know. I think that's the closest comparison that I could make to conversion therapy. You know, both of them are basically torture places for people.
Well, yeah, because like I mean, C.R. Williams was bringing up like bodily autonomy, and it's like no one has walked away from conversion therapy that has had there's no positive outcome from it at all.
No.
And it's like, is it autonomy if they're doing it because they're being manipulated to do it, and it's not something they truly want to do, but they're being, told that if they do this they're saved or something, and convinced of that, even though that's not true. I don't know. Once you have evidence, then yes, then law enforcement can and should step in, even though they may be kooky beliefs. You can't touch them until they go into physically infringing on others. I was saying this as a counter to state mandated. Yeah, well, apparently we've got 3 states that mandate them. Well, though they don't mandate, but
they probably want to.
Probably. Especially the direction that Florida has gone. Well, I don't know. Some of the things I've seen come out of, what was that, Alabama? Yeah, Alabama. Ugh. Like, they still try to peg, like, LGBTQ people with anti-sodomy laws, even though they technically can't, but they still try. It's like that's wild. They do that in Arkansas, too. That was one reason why I didn't want to... My dad offered to have me move down to Arkansas with him, and I was looking at some of the things they have on the books down there, and I was like, no... That doesn't seem like it's in my best interest.
Yeah, Arkansas is probably very, very, very anti-LGBT. And it's like, you want your LGBT son to move down there? Like, are you insane?
Well, when I brought it up to him, he said it was a fair point. I mean... He likes being there because, weed's legal, and he's a hippie, and he can be out in the wilderness, and he likes that. I mean,
there's other states that are like that are not LGBT bigoted,
Well, originally they wanted to move to Colorado.
That would have been better.
But it's more expensive.
Yeah, especially in Denver.
So, they got like a really big house with really nice view. They got a mountain in their backyard. I mean, they're hippies. They love it. They're just surrounded by nature, and they love it. And apparently, like, it's sort of like a touristy town. So they've got like a lot of stores that sell like arts and crafts and hippie stuff. And it's like, well, I'm good for that town. The rest, the state as a whole, though, does not sound appealing to me. It's like if something
a lot like Wisconsin here. Wisconsin sucks just as much.
Yeah. So I mean, I was like, well, if Clarence Thomas does end up overturning something like Obergefell v. Hodges or Lawrence v. Texas, it's like I don't know if I want to be in Alabama, even if you found like a city that's cool. Or not Alabama, but Arkansas. Yeah, so I mean that's my takeaway message is hopefully we can get education out there to try and keep LGBTQ people from being indoctrinated into that in the first place. And
like if we have courses or like units in like the classroom in high school teaching about like LGBT history, I think it would prevent a lot of teens from going into conversion therapy.
Oh, isn't that a double-edged sword? I mean, then they'll accuse us of indoctrinating and grooming.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I don't know.
They already condemn us for grooming and shit, and it's like, we're just telling people that we exist. Like these people want to act like we shouldn't tell people that we exist. You know, they want to live in a world where there's only straight people only. That's
Well,
their ideal world.
again, that's the double standard, is because a lot of the bigots, they'll tell their kids that LGBT people exist, but it's okay when they do it because they're condemning us, saying like LGBT people exist, but they're really bad and they're gross, they're disgusting, they're on that, all the little talking points that they have, instead of telling them the truth of, sometimes that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Braceful on that, force teenagers to sit through a class they don't want to, and the scorn will come from it.
There's already classes that teens are taking that they don't want to take.
Math.
Pretty much everything in high school nobody wants to take. Study World War II for like the billionth time. Yeah, we all get Hitler's bad. Yeah, we all get that the Soviet Union was bad. Okay, let's move on to something else. Okay,
But the other thing is like what ex-gay is doing. They're trying ex-gay. They're trying to undo the damage that they started, and I think that's good. But yeah, I think that's the takeaway message. Understand, version therapy camps. They're indoctrinating. They're misinformation, propaganda, brainwashing, cultish stuff, and there's no pros that have ever come from any of them. None.
No.
None. And there's other ways to get information out there without forcing it on people, I mean.
Right.
And again, I would recommend the documentary. It was good. It was really good.
Yeah, it was.
Kind of heartbreaking at times. I think especially being LGBTQ, it hits you pretty hard. Especially, that's the other thing, is that when you realize, I've talked about this before, is that the younger generations, they don't realize how new some of the LGBT rights really are. And when you watch this stuff and you realize, like, this stuff gets really, really close to current day.
Mm-hmm. Because, ex-gay was shut down in 2013. That's the year I graduated high school.
Yeah, this stuff happened in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And like I said, I was fortunate enough to grow up and be raised by hippie parents, so they accepted me. And I mean, this stuff was going on, and I was old enough that when this stuff was going on, if I had been in a situation where I had parents that were against it, I could have ended up in one of them. Or shit, the Westboro Southern Baptist Church is not far from me. It's like, ooh, no. But yeah,
the Westboro Baptist Church is in Kansas, or Missouri.
It's in Topeka.
Oh, I thought it was somewhere like northeast.
No, it's in Topeka, Kansas. That's where Reverend Phelps's Westboro Southern Baptist Church was, and that is where his memorial is now that he's dead. I had a group of friends when he died. We wanted to get a porta potty and put it on his burial site, but then we learned that his burial site was protected, and we were like, well, shit.
That would have been really, really funny. Like, that right there is the edgy shit that the woke skull left will never do.
Well, that's what we wanted to do back in the day.
Mhm.
we, we wanted people to be shitting on his grave. You know,
hopefully we can do that on fucking Donald Trump's grave when he finally kicks his bucket.
you know, like, well, Reverend Phelps, he was some piece of work. He was not a very nice man. You know, it wasn't just LGBTQ people that he attacked. He was protesting he was protesting funerals of people who were coming back in coffins from overseas from, you know, the war in the Middle East that, you know, was happening at the time.
Pat Robertson is just as bad. You know, it'll be a good day once he's dead.
But yeah. So anyway, yeah, I think I'll find some of the I'll get the links to some of these things, like you know, about James, and I'll see if I can get some links about the documentary itself, and put them in the description when this is published. And and thank you all for joining. Yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up. You good?
Yeah.
All right. Well, have a good night, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.